Q&A. Why in Baruch She'omar does it say Yochid Chei Oilami Melech, and in Yishtabach it says Melech Yochid Chei Oilami? What is the biur? So the biur is in Chassidus, in Torah on Daf Mem Amud Gimel. Who knows what Mem Amud Gimel means? You know. Who doesn't know? Whoever doesn't know should know that usually in Gemara you have Amud Aleph and Amud Beis. But in Torah there are two columns on each page. So Amud Beis is the second column on the first side, and Amud Gimel is the first column on the second side. So here there's a biur about it, and in short, the biur is that Sfiras HaMalchus, you have Sfiras HaMalchus the way it's Yedid Lamato, and then you have Sfiras HaMalchus the way it's Oila Lamayla. So Yochid Chei Ha'ilami Melech means that Yochid Eibusher is remaining Yochid all alone, and the Chei Ha'ilamim and the Chayes of the world comes only from Melech, from Malchus the way it's Lamato. That's in the beginning of davening by Baruch She'omar. After by Yishtabach, when we go up a level, so then Melech also goes up, and now Melech goes up to Yochid, and that's why Melech is on the level of Yochid, and from there comes Chei Ha'ilam. So ideally, by davening, a person is supposed to go up to the level that as he grows in his davening, he senses that the Chayes goes up higher and higher. The question is, can you please explain in detail what happens after a person goes up to Shammai? So there's a Bocher here, he's not here right now, his name is Shalom Block, he's not here right now, right? So Shalom Block's grandfather was a very, very big professor, and he wrote a book. The Rebbe asked him to write a few books. He wrote a book on God, mysticism, and rationality. And he, from a very scientific perspective, proves that there has to be an Eibishter, and it's a very, very deep book. He says in the Akadama that he wrote it in such a way that simple people should understand, not only for scientists. And he even asked his friend to read it. Lepoil, his friend, must have been a scientist too. And most people, it's very, very choppy. So the whole book goes back and forth of Rayis, Lakan, because it's no. And he explains something that's very, very geschmack, and he seems to be very objective. And at the end of the book, he says, I have a scientific proof that there's Eibishter. This is based on how science works. And his scientific proof is based on NDEs. NDEs means near-death experiences. Near-death experiences is many, many people that they were in some kind of trauma or that were in an accident, whatever it may be, they were sick, and they felt their shama coming out of their body and seeing things and seeing lights, many, many stories. So there are many goyim that wrote books about it. Lahavdil, there are Christians that talk also in these inyanim. And he says, for such a thing, scientifically, for so many thousands and thousands of people all over the world, without knowing of each other, for each one to say this, scientifically it doesn't make sense. They should all be making it up. So there must be that there's a neshama, and it comes out of the body afterwards. He goes on, he says, you can argue, but he says, when he started studying the topic, so he read in an article that any group of 30 people, there's for sure one person that experienced it. So he's a college professor, so he was teaching a class of 40, 50 students. So he said, let me try. And he said the statement, anybody here ever had such an experience? No one said anything. So I said, say Baba Maisis. And Pel Mamish, he finished his class, whatever, he went home, and the next day, or after the class, one of the students came to him and said, I was embarrassed to say it in public, but yes, I had such an experience. But I think people think I'm crazy, so I don't want to talk about it. So when it was proven to him, and he did more research, Now, in all those near-death experiences, they pretty much, they feel that they describe the neshama leaving the body, and they describe that the neshama comes out and sees what's going on, and they don't really describe so much time, but then how they go up Lamaila, and then there are many different, each person has his own story, what he sees, how they go and they travel, and sometimes they see these planets or beautiful buildings or whatever it may be. Pretty much all of them agree that they have some kind of special light, that they become one with this light. A lot of inyan that it says over them, when you don't see this, like mamish connects one to another. And they become one thing with the light, and then some of them meet people that they know from Eilam Hamish, from this world, from the other world, and then they get to a point where there's like a Beis Din. Some people they come back right away, but then there's a Beis Din. But pretty much all of them come back. That's how we have the reports. So what happens after the Beis Din, that B'derech Klal we don't really know, but he describes at length. So that we're talking about your grandfather. Yeah, your grandfather's book. Which grandfather? Just a block. That one has a book also? That one has a book also, or which book you meant?
Philosophy book, I don't know why you would quote it.
It's all about the Eibush, what are you talking about?
I know.
Yeah, you have to write the books, you have to learn. Read it. So eventually the neshama goes further l'mayla. I don't know, so you could read this today. There's so many people that experience it that they say their story's over. Like I said, each person has his own twist of what happened. And eventually they go to a Beis Din, and over there the Beis Din, some people describe the Beis Din, and over there, so the Gemara tells us one element of what happens. The Gemara on Shabbos, Lamed Aleph, Omar Rava, B'shah shemachnisim adam ledin, when they bring the person into din, l'mayla, imrim loy, nasasav and nasata be'amuna, did you do it, were you honest in your dealings, kavata itim l'toira, you're careful to have sometimes some l'toira, asakta v'piri v'rivya, were you involved in having children, mitzayim, tzipisa liyeshua, were you looking forward to the geula, pilpalta b'chachma, evanta davar b'tich davar, they ask him all these questions. And there's a Tosfos that discusses this Gemara also. What's first actually says that even though they ask him first about dealing honestly, but the poil the main din happens about limud HaTorah. So that's the higher that stage. Some of the stories of these people the Taka describe, that's what happens after that these questions were asked to them. But then how they go into Gan Eden or into Gehenna, that's already, if they would go there, you wouldn't have the report. So it's vice that after that the neshama goes. It says every neshama has to go through Gehenna. Some neshamas just have to walk through it. Some neshamas have to be there for longer. It says even the biggest Rishonim are not there longer than 11 months, longer than 12 months. Sometimes the neshama is so bad they don't let it go into Gehenna. So it takes it a longer time till it goes into Gehenna. Sometimes there's stories of dibuks of Gilgulim that the neshama wasn't allowed to go into Gehenna. But most people are not shaykh to that. Most people, they go into Gehenna for a little bit, and then they're cleaned over there. The type of pain that's described in Gehenna is a very, very terrible pain. Tanya brings over there that the worst kind of pain you can imagine in this world, aside physical pain, aside emotional pain, people making fun of you, people close to you dying, people close to you getting into fights, the worst kind of pains you can imagine, times that by 70 years worth, and it happens again, and it's all very, very intense, and all that goes on in Gehenna. It's the example that's always used is a burning fire, because that's what we can imagine. Scaring, being burned alive, Rahman al-Islam, can be a terrible thing, but it's obviously a lot worse than that, and that goes on for 11 months, and then or 12 months, whatever it may be, and then after that you go into Gehenna. There's something called Nahar Dinor. Nahar Dinor is a river of fire that they toivel the river of fire, and after you toivel the river of fire, then there's the Amud. Put your hand down, I saw already, no. Not. Then there's an Amud. The Amud is a pole. It's just like you have in the fire stations. You go climb up the pole and down the pole. So over there also you have the fire. Then they climb up the pole to the level of Gan Eden. Now Gan Eden, there's Gan Eden Atachten, and then there's Gan Eden Helyon. And every Shabbos, and every Chodesh, every Yom Tov, every Yom of the Pagra, they go up even higher. There's constantly going up and down. Tzadikim in the Menucha. And in Gan Eden itself, what are they doing? They're sitting and enjoying the biggest geschmack you could ever imagine, the biggest type you can imagine. Over there is again 1,000 times better, 800 times better, the biggest geschmack there may possibly be. That's the most that I know about these in Yod.
Is it like you learn out from like what Block's Deborah said that going go to Gan Eden and that's
I don't know about good. If the Prokim in the Tanakh were divided up by the Goyim, why do we follow it? Or why can't we make our own set of Prokim made by Yidden? So the Bachar is asking that from Moshe Rabbeinu we have that Trop, and part of the Trop is Seif Pasuk. So Tanakh is divided up into Psukim, but not into Prokim. And in the Rishonim we don't have the concept of Prokim, they just say the Psukim, or they say where in the Chumash it is. But it was only later that it was divided into Prokim. And the accepted opinion is that the source of the one that divided, this is the person that divided the Prokim wasn't Jewish, he was a Galach. And the question is, why did it continue? So the answer of Pashtus is that was a scholar by Klal Yisrael, and the reason why the Chatchila Yidden accepted that dividing into Prokim is because in those times there was a lot of debates, and in order to speak to the Goyim, you had to tell them, okay, you're quoting me Pasuk Zeh and Pasuk Zeh, so the Yidden had to know which Prokim and Psukim, so that's why they had to follow that. But afterwards it was accepted by Klal Yisrael, and the Rebbe writes in the Sichel, look at the Sichel Chedek Tazayin, page 229, Ha'areh 40, the Rebbe writes, Yidua shaklavatariya b'negia lechalukazu lekapit lachum mekoyret. It's known that this conversation about who divided it, and seemingly the source is seemingly not a Jewish source. The Rebbe doesn't say clearly, but that's what the Rebbe is alluding to. Aval b'cholif in the Rebbe says, regardless, harei nimtzes chalukah zu b'chol asvarim dechol tfutzis Yisrael ugdei Yisrael u'meyos kama v'kama deiris. That this way of dividing it into prakim is found all around the Klal Yisrael, every single from a today. That's why all the Gedei Yisrael in the past 300 years, they go by it. U'minag Yisrael Torah, and Amela we say about this, minag Yisrael is Torah. The Rebbe has a few more Maram Mekaymis over here. So the Maskon is that we should not be changing it. This was discovered by Klal Yisrael, and we keep it up. Yeah?
What's it called?
I don't know.
Also the Psukim were divided by then?
Psukim were divided by Moshe Rabbeinu, but there were no numbers. Now that there was a pasuk, the pasuk is over. Now that you make it into the parak, and the parak has 10 toy pasuks, so each one becomes Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Kol.
Why do we divide psukim differently?
We don't divide psukim differently.
No.
Psukim are divided the same.
Not the same as I'm saying different for the game.
No.
There's certain differences.
No.
How we number
Verses are the same. Chapters are the same. Everything is the same. Chapter numbers are the
Prakim are different.
Prakim and chapters, and Prakim are chapters and verses are psukim. It's all the same.
I'm pretty sure no, because I know when Yeshaya, you have a different, we start a parak.
Okay, if you know differently than different, this is what I know.
Okay, well. This is the big discussion.
I was told that you want Bachrim should get married at the age of 18 or 19. And you explain. I am a Lubavitcher Chassid, and the Rebbe's kav is for Bachrim to get married at a younger age. There's a book over here which I say for which every Bacher should have. It's called Shidduchim in Nisuin, Hirois of the Rebbe regarding getting married. And the Rebbe writes over here. So first, someone suggested the Rebbe to make a kollel for Bachrim to learn until 30 years old and then get married. And the Rebbe writes about that Chas v'Sholem. That's one thing. Now the Rebbe continues another letter. There's a whole bunch of letters. The Rebbe says, I feel very, very bad about it. I have a big tsar. I'm very pained by the fact that as far as the Shiyidin, when they came to Eretz Yisrael, so they started getting married at a later age. When they were in the lands where they came from, Morocco, Bechulum, they got married at a younger age. And when the Rebbe goes on and he says,